to apply pressure on the administration. We know that President Biden has made this a personal priority for him. He has talked about it. He has described it publicly in very concerning ways, that it is essential that she come home. And I think keeping the attention up, at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to not so much what a pro league can do or what her coach says. It really is going to come down to negotiations, diplomatic discussions, and what the NBA and WNBA and others in that space can do, I think, is continue to talk about her, continue to say, let's bring her home.
Yep, we've seen that at the games. We saw it at the ESPY Awards. All right, Sportico legal analyst Mike McCann, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Almond milk and oat milk, well, those can be great for people who are looking for non-dairy creamers, but why the surcharge at so many coffee chains? Up next, why some say the popular coffee shops are milking their customers.
Welcome back to Today. We got a lot to celebrate on this Wednesday morning. It's good to have you along with us.
You don't know when your moment's coming, but when it does, you take it.
Everybody good, and that's it.
NBC News, streaming free now.
At 73, Prince Charles is still waiting for the job that is his birthright.
Do we want Charles? Do we want a monarchy?
I'm Keir Simmons, and we'll take on these questions and more in our new podcast, Born to Rule. Listen now.
NBC News, streaming free now.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand, so we've created a newscast just for them. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
No stress, no mess, just yum.
That's it. You don't know when your moment's coming, but when it does, you take it.
After nearly 2 years of the pandemic slowing down travel, Americans are hitting the roads in huge numbers to get out and get what they've missed out on. They're calling it revenge travel. The leisure and hospitality industry is now making up for years of lost revenue. And while the customers are back, workers are not quite caught up. CNBC restaurant and small business correspondent Kate Rogers joins us now from San Francisco. Hey, Kate, good to see you. You know, we saw in today's jobs reports that the biggest gains actually did come in the leisure hospitality service jobs, and they added nearly 100,000 workers in July. How is this labor shortage, though? It's still not enough people. How's it affecting what we're going to see if we're traveling this summer?
Hey, Vicki. Yeah, that's right. So almost 100,000 jobs added, but if you look beneath that number, still 1.2 million jobs below where the industry was pre-pandemic. So they're really short a lot of workers. And if you look at the latest JOLTS data that we got from the Labor Department this past Wednesday, it showed leisure and hospitality openings at about 8.5%, down from 9% in May. So it's gotten slightly better, but the numbers are still there. It basically means this is coming at a terrible time for operators and tourist attractions, because after 2 years of a lot of missed revenue and a lot of pent-up demand from the American consumer, they're seeing people coming in ready to spend money, ready to finally take that vacation this year, and a lot of them are just learning to do more with less. So it's certainly been stressful for them. They're welcoming the tourists, obviously, with open arms because they want to make this work. But we did hear from the Big Hotel Association that basically said some of its members are blocking off rooms right now because they just don't have the staff to clean and service them.
Yeah, real impacts, and I think what we as consumers can do is be a little more patient, give a little more grace to the service workers. 1.2 million jobs still needed. So what are these business owners, these tour operators, what are they doing to kind of shore up? And you said that they're looking outside the box this season when you talk to them.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot, as I said, are doing more with less. We talked to some restaurant operators at hotels who are maybe only open 5 days a week instead of 7, shortening what they have on the menu to make it a little bit easier for people in the back of the house who are cooking, perhaps not doing a full clean of your hotel room, right, every day when you're staying there. They'll come in and tidy up. They won't do a full service as they would if you were checking in to a new hotel every day. But we did talk to Maurice Piers in Wildwood, New Jersey. It's this big water park, and they had a positive story because they got out ahead of this hiring crunch, and they are fully staffed this summer for their seasonal workers. A lot of that has been staffing done by teams to make up for some of the shortfall of workers. They actually lobbied the New Jersey State Legislature to have this law put into place where teen workers who are 15, 16, 17 years old can work up to 50 hours a week if they're not in school. So they can work up to 10 hours a day, so a little bit of a longer day if they want to do it. And that's allowed a lot of these places to kind of
soy, and coconut. Animal rights group PETA and some celebrities call it a fee that punishes people who avoid animal products and those who are lactose intolerant. Non-dairy milks are growing in popularity. In 2019, 1 in 10 Pete's coffee drinks had non-dairy milk in it. This year, it's 1 in 5. And the dairy alternatives market is projected to hit $66 billion by 2030.
Right.
Do you think it's fair to charge extra for plant-based milk?
I think in today's world and with pricing the way it is, with shortages, I understand that.
Some people are just grateful they offer plant-based milk and they're willing to pay the surcharge. What do you think? Were you grateful that they at least offer the plant-based milk?
I think it's really inclusive to have plant-based milk offered. I feel like charging extra for it kind of takes advantage of people who actually need it. I know there are a lot of people who are lactose intolerant like myself.
PETA is roasting coffee giant Starbucks over its surcharge with protests like this. The campaign, backed by more than 100,000 people and some star power, including Paul McCartney and Succession actor James Cromwell, who in May superglued himself to a Starbucks counter in protest.
When will you stop charging us more for vegan milk?
When I was making Babe, I said I can't do this anymore because every animal that I worked with on the set, their relative was on the table for lunch.
Cromwell says Starbucks is milking cows and customers for profit.
It just shows their greed and their insensitivity, both to people who are lactose intolerant, but also to an environment that they claim to care about.
Starbucks eliminated the surcharge in its UK stores earlier this year, but continues to charge extra in the US. The company said in a statement, in part, it sees non-dairy milk like customization, such as an additional espresso shot or syrup. It would not say how much it spends on non-dairy milk. Pete's Coffee said in a statement, in part, it charges extra because alternative milk products continue to cost more than dairy milk. Right now, many non-dairy milks do cost more, in part because the U.S. government subsidizes the dairy industry. Dunkin' Donuts did not respond to multiple requests for comment. London-based coffee chain Pret a Manger made a bold move, ditching its 60-cent non-dairy milk surcharge back in 2020.
One of our core values is around doing the right thing. We thought, you know what, really it's not the right thing to do to have this vegan tax, if you will, or an extra charge.
So there is a cost to it.
Absolutely. It's 50% more for a plant-based milk cost to us.
Will you ever go back?
No.
PETA plans to keep fighting for other coffee companies to do the same.
We want Starbucks to know that as long as they are punishing their customers by upcharging for vegan milks, protests will follow them across the country.
Well, it could make a difference. Roughly 2/3 of the world is lactose intolerant, according to the National Institute of Health. All right, well, coming up, one of his biggest songs is called Tennessee Whiskey, but Chris Stapleton's old Kentucky home is on his mind. How the 8-time Grammy Award winner is helping his home region recover from historic flooding. You'll want to see this. It's right after the break.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Mr. Secretary, when is this going to get better? You came into this job saying you were going to fight crime. Have you been successful? Can you update us on the status of negotiations?
Top story with Tom Ellis. Weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now. We're here to start conversations because it's not my job to tell you what to think. My job is to think about what you tell me. Now tonight with Joshua Johnson. Weeknights at 8 on NBC News Now.
You don't know when your moment's coming, but when it does, you take it. The Seduction, Dateline News podcast. Listen now.
Top story with Tom Ellis. Weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
Well, it has been an emotional few years for the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Being told to, quote, go back to your own country throughout the pandemic, the AAPI community has also seen a sharp rise in hate incidents, including verbal and physical attacks, according to data from Stop AAPI Hate and the FBI. One of the latest racist attacks was directed at New York State Senator John Liu. Take a listen.
Main menu. To listen to your messages, press 1. To send...
John, you've
lost my vote, you chink piece of shit. With the video from the park, you lost my vote, you lost my whole family's vote, you're losing thousands of votes, you go back, friend.
To replay, press 1.
Another day at the office.
Another day at the office. You know, Senator Lou, he shared this video on Twitter last week. He joins me now. I saw it on Instagram. I actually reshared it. I'm so happy that you're joining us today. Just listening to it again, it infuriates me to see that hatred. It was spewed so freely. Like, he didn't think twice about calling you and saying all of these things. Tell me, you know, as a public figure, you certainly have a thick skin. You're no stranger to hearing what people think. But this kind of racist attack, how did it hit you the first time you listened to it?
Vicky, thanks so much for bringing this up. You know, it's not the first time, and it likely won't be the last time that I face this kind of attack. In fact, in 20 years in office, I've had my share, but it's still jarring. And it's, you know, you think about this person making this kind of call against, you know, someone like me. I'm fairly well protected in a lot of different ways. So I can only imagine if he was upset at some other person, what kind of invective, if not outright violence, this person could direct that at somebody else. So it's alarming for a lot of reasons. As you mentioned earlier in this report, Asian Americans have gone through 2 years of an absolute onslaught of anti-Asian hate, coincident with the coronavirus pandemic. And you know, I've done my best to bring about government actions, whether it be more resources or holding people accountable or providing more education about the AAPI community. But it's also about encouraging people to never let these things slide, to call it out whenever it happens, and to report it as much as possible. And so I felt it was, you know, I certainly had to do what I preached.
Yeah, we talk about this. It's so important to have context and data points. And we do have some data points. Some of the FBI data that's come out has shown a threefold increase in anti-Asian crimes in America, more than 300% from 2020 to 2021. You talked about why you shared this, because you don't want to let it slide. You don't want people to think this is the norm and that it's okay. Right. What's been the reaction on Twitter, on Instagram, from your constituents? What are people saying to you?
You know, the reaction has been very, very positive and favorable. That's certainly not what I was looking for. I just wanted to make sure that people understood this was happening. And you know, there are a lot of people who understand that this is actually not all that surprising. You know, we've all been through it, whether overtly or sometimes indirectly. But what I was surprised about was a very large percentage of people who were just couldn't believe that this happened.
Yeah.
And
like they don't realize this is out there, and some people are facing it every day, whatever community, marginalized community you may be a part of. So it is important to have that dialogue.
That's right. It's to let people be more aware of the kinds of attacks that Asian Americans and other people have been facing during these really tough times with a global pandemic, with economic uncertainty.
Right. Before I let you go, Senator Lou, for people who are maybe hearing about this for the first time, who want to be allies, who want to be supportive, what are some suggestions you have for folks to reach out to their friends and people in their community and say, hey, no, you know what, I stand with you. I'm not okay with all this racism.
Well, specifically on the anti-Asian hate, the hate comes from ignorance and fear and, you know, not understanding a whole lot about the AAPI community. I would say, you know, look to us a little bit more, understand that we're not the model minority or the perpetual fauna or even worse, the yellow peril. We are people, we are part of American history, part of America, and treat us accordingly and understand that there are other people who are still ignorant and therefore direct their hate and blame us for a whole bunch of things, including economic recession and no less than global pandemic.
Senator John Liu, thank you very much for sharing that and for coming on and providing some insight, and we really, really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, well, more than 20 years ago, Chris Stapleton chased his country music dreams all the way to Nashville. While he was a couple hundred miles away from his hometown of Staffordsville, Kentucky, his old Kentucky home was never far from his mind, especially during last week's devastating and deadly flooding. MSNBC anchor Lindsay Reiser shows us how the 8-time Grammy Award winner is helping his his home region and one special fan find healing.
Chris Stapleton knows a lot about starting over. After spending years writing songs for some of the biggest artists in music, including Luke Bryan and even Adele, Stapleton started over, stepping into the spotlight and becoming a superstar along the way. Starting Over is even the name of his 2020 album. And sadly, what thousands of people in the flood-ravaged region of his native eastern Kentucky must now do.
My home's gone. My new home I just bought for my 4 children's gone.
I lost everything I had. I had to swim out of my house. But you know what? We're gonna make it.
Stapleton made an unannounced visit back to the heart of the devastation in eastern Kentucky, helping former neighbors and fans rebuild their homes and lives.
I turned around and there stood Chris Stapleton.
For Courtney Kreider, a trip to the Prestonburg Walmart to stock up on essentials this week was anything but ordinary. Not just because she happened to bump into one of the biggest country music singers in the world, but for what he means to her daughter. 6-year-old Etta isn't like most kids her age. She has nonverbal autism and suffers from seizures. Etta's days are filled with learning to develop skills by working with puzzles and stimulating her senses for any kind of response. While the puzzles are pleasing, there's one thing that always does the trick.
Etta loves his music, but she calms down to it. We'll turn on different songs of his and it changes her spirit.
For the next few minutes, Etta had the superstar singer's attention, even playing with Stapleton's trademark beard.
I always knew that she would go for the beard.
Courtney considers this brief, once-in-a-lifetime meeting in the middle of Walmart nothing short of a miracle.
We have actually been trying to get a hold of him for about 3 years.
Hey, Etta, this is Chris Stapleton. I'm here with your mom. I just wanted to say hi.
God put us together at Walmart. And I knew that that's what it was. I was like, man, this was meant to be. The chances of us being there at the same time and me having Etta was crazy.
Right.
Can you believe you just met Chris Stapleton? What in the world? It was just wholesome, pure, angelic joy. She just was so sweet, and she knew that something big had happened. And as a mother, that's all you ever want for your kids, just to give them exactly what they would ever want. And something that seems so hard was just put right in our lap yesterday.
Well, thanks to Lindsay Reiser for that piece. Today, the White House announced that the president and first lady will visit Kentucky Monday to visit victims of the flooding. The threat of more heavy rain has a lot of people there in eastern Kentucky on edge. Flood watches are in effect through Sunday, possibly soaking the cleanup that's happening right now. Flood survivors are desperate for the help to keep flowing in.
We're just hoping that people won't forget about this place. In a couple of weeks, everybody's going to be back, working, and they're just going to forget about this little area, and they can't do that.
Well, one person making sure eastern Kentucky is not forgotten is Zach Paul. He is the director of tourism for Knott County, Kentucky. That's one of the hardest hit areas, still recovering from all of that catastrophic flooding. Zach, we so appreciate you joining us. A lot of people may know you from your time working with Mike Rowe on the show Dirty Jobs. He posted about your situation on Facebook. That went viral. Hopefully it's brought some more help and attention to you and what you're going through. Talk to us about how things are going right now. It has been about 9 days since the flooding. Can you give us an update on where you are right now?
Well, yeah, it's been about a week, and paths are finally starting to get cleared in for the haulers. We can get to people. There's still a lot that can't get out. It's been hot. The volunteers hopefully are staying hydrated. People are sitting in their homes, just no air conditioning, burning up. But we also don't want to see the rain coming right now. The waters would just
to see how people who've lost everything are still helping their neighbors. And you're getting a boost from Mike Rowe, too. So talk to us about how he's also bringing attention and helping.
You know, Mike has been great. I'm really close to him. We do the show. I talk about home all the time. I try to get him to come down here and do some work. He's a busy man. But thankfully, you know, like Chris, y'all had Chris on there just a second ago. People don't forget where they come from. And that's what is all around here in Southeast Kentucky. Those same people are just stepping up and helping their neighbors. People that are getting untrapped out of these hollers are coming out and helping in full force. But it's not going to be over anytime soon. The vast area that this covers, it's over 2,000 square miles. And it's some of the roughest terrain that you will have to travel. With roads washed out, I mean, there's homes sitting in roads. I'm now on the side of the roads because the crews have come in and pushed them out of the way, just so we can get power and water back to people. I actually just took my second shower in 8 days. It was nice this morning, but until you go that long without the necessities and stuff, you don't really understand.
Well, before I let you go, Zach, what do you want people to know about the recovery efforts? And if they want to help, they're sitting at home watching right now, what's the best course of action?
The best thing that people can do is, if they have the time, come and help us. There's a lot of manpower that needs to be done. Any construction crews out there that want to come and help us, you know, work on rebuilding our roads and making it passable so we can get to the people that have needs. I just delivered some food to a couple that are diabetic, that can't get out of off their hill. And so more hands helping us do that kind of stuff would be greatly appreciated. And then, you know, of course, just donations, keep sending that stuff. The weeks to come is actually where it's going to be a lot harder. Once people can get out of their hollers and need help and can go to people to help and stuff, we just don't want to be forgotten about. Our people are stepping up and helping everybody they can, but we need as much help as we can from outside.
Well, Zach, thank you for coming on and helping us put a spotlight on what's going on there. Zach Hall from Knott County, Kentucky. We appreciate it, Zach.
Thank you, guys.
A little razzle-dazzle meets history on Broadway. The trailblazing trans actress who is now taking over an iconic role. That's coming up right after this break.
What do you love about fatherhood?
The chaos, the learning. Is climate change one of your top priorities?
What's your message to girls who want to make a difference in their own communities?
Believe in yourself.
These days, it feels like the news never stops. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. It can be hard to keep up, so let's get started together.
Hallie Jackson Now, weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
No stress, no mess, just young.
That's it.
News is happening now.
Look at what's making headlines around the world.
We're coming on the air with breaking
Significant moment.
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
Top Story with Tom Yamas, weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
It's the best time of the morning, Tom. Feel the vibes there, the show.
Toppin', what's poppin' now? A trailblazing Broadway debut for one actress. Playbill reports Pose star Angelica Ross will take over the role of Roxy Hart in Chicago next month. Ross will be the first openly transgender actress to perform this role on Broadway. Her run as Roxy lasts 8 weeks. Post Malone proves playing video games can pay off. TMZ reports the rapper raised $200,000 last month by live streaming himself playing video games. The money will go to different charities, including the Trevor Project and the United Way. Lady Gaga confirms she's joining the Joker sequel. The Grammy and Oscar winner tweeted this video yesterday. The song Cheek to Cheek plays as Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix's name flashes and their silhouettes dance. It is rumored Gaga will play the Joker's lover, Harley Quinn. That movie comes out in 2024. All right, well, online dating is evolving with new dating apps popping up in the metaverse. Meeting in the virtual world can provide an intimate setting for people to get to know each other without the pressure of focusing on each other's physical appearance. Here's NBC News Now anchor Savannah Sellers with an inside look at how it all works.
This is a duck world where you can feed the ducks.
So have either of you been on a date here?
Oh, yeah, I've been on a date here. It was pretty chill.
Feeding ducks, a nature stroll, or even a round of mini golf. Welcome to Dating in the Metaverse, where you can come as yourself, that's me, or a floating coding robot, all from the comfort of your couch.
This is our Flirtual Speed matching worlds.
Flirtual is a VR dating app that lets you go on dates with people all over the world in different VR worlds and games.
Anthony Tan and Kyle Farwell are the Gen Zers who run the dating company, which operates similar to a real-life dating app. Users match through profiles via their app or website, but instead of drinks at a bar in the neighborhood, hopeful singles meet up virtually.
This is where I met my girlfriend 2 years ago.
In this bar?
Yeah.
So when you tell people, would you say we met at a bar?
I guess so.
Luke Smith is a 19-year-old teen in the UK looking for love, both on real-life dating apps and on Flirtual.
It's the same thing with online dating, like it started off with the younger generation, but as the older generation got more used to it, they started using it and so on, and I feel like the metaverse will end up being the same way.
Flirtual's not the only one trying to get in on this.
Planet Theta is the world's first dedicated space for virtual reality dating.
Aurora Townsend, the company's chief marketing officer, calls it a safer way to meet up.
It's so normalized that when we, as women, go to like a bar or a restaurant to go meet someone that we met through a dating app, to text multiple friends our exact GPS location to make sure that, hey, if anything sketchy is going on, this is where I'm at. We want to change that.
Plus, there's the convenience.
If you have a busy work week, you know, you can be in your sweatpants with a glass of wine chatting with people.
And because you mostly see people as avatars first, fans of VR dating say it can lead to better connections.
Like say on Tinder, you know, you're swiping, you're just seeing their faces. You're not really looking at their personalities.
So metaverse daters might wait a few dates before revealing their actual faces.
But up here, you're getting their exact personality.
So tell me, what is it like dating someone in VR?
It feels very real. You know, I hope this kind of feels pretty real here. Like, I can give Kyle a hug and we can just like.
Oh. Oh.
So,
Can you give me a hug?
yeah, sure. All right, come here.
Wow, that's funny.
A lot of people experience in VR what we call some phantom sense or phantom touch, where you touch someone in VR and you can feel it.
And now there's somebody that you like that you're talking to in the metaverse.
Absolutely.
So will you try to take that into real life?
I'm hoping to.
All right, thanks, Savannah. Hi, everyone. I'm Vicki Wynn. My co-anchor Morgan Radford is off today. Right now on NBC News Now, nationwide spread. The Biden administration declaring the monkeypox outbreak a public health emergency. How the designation will free up funds and resources as cases top 7,000 in the U.S. Capitol Hill breakthrough. Democrats reach a deal to move forward on a bill to reduce inflation and fight climate change. We'll tell you what's in it and what it means for you if the bill lands on the president's desk. Coffee conflict, outrage over extra fees when ordering a cup of joe. Why it costs more to put milk alternatives in your drink. Lending a hand, country superstar Chris Stapleton shocking flood victims in Kentucky, helping them rebuild their homes. See the surprise encounter at a local Walmart that's being described as nothing short of a miracle. Good to have you with me. We begin with the fast-growing monkeypox outbreak. The Biden administration now declaring a public health emergency.
Really, this is about the government taking this very seriously, about putting more tools into our toolbox as we fight this virus.
The number of monkeypox cases in the U.S. ballooning in the last month. The CDC now reporting infections in all but 2 states with more than 7,000 confirmed cases since May. We'll talk with NBC News medical contributor Dr. Uche Blackstock in just a moment, but let's begin with NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. Mike, Biden administration officials have acknowledged they're playing catch-up on this monkeypox outbreak. Why did they decide to make this a public health emergency now when the WHO did this a couple weeks ago?
Well, Vicki, let's start with what this public health emergency declaration does. According to the White House, it does open up additional funding sources that they can use to marshal the federal response and to help any states that might be requesting additional federal help to get the money they need. It also allows for further testing, for further ability to study the monkeypox virus, how it's being transmitted, so that they can learn more about how to effectively tackle this. And lastly, it also helps to potentially speed up the distribution and supply of vaccines, which we know has been a major concern. Now, you asked the right question, which is why are they doing this now when, for instance, it's been almost 3 months since monkeypox really emerged and was a focus questions that we were asking of the White House? Well, one of the explanations is, especially for a White House that came in vowing to take on COVID and was very familiar with how that virus was being spread, is this is a very different, very form of illness. In one case, as they are pointing out, all but 1% of the cases involve men. The primary concern of the group is that this is being primarily spread among those men engaged in sex with other men. Also, the average age is 35, and so this is something that is a much more sort of narrow universe of people who have been affected by it, but it's still a cause for concern, and that's why this declaration came yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely, and anyone can get it. It's so important to emphasize that. Mike, a major concern among public health officials has been the vaccine supply. So how is the White House specifically addressing that with this declaration?
Well, the good news through all this is that unlike COVID, we already have an effective vaccine that can help prevent the spread of this. The issue has been having enough supply, and so this is an area of focus now for the White House. There's only, in fact, one foreign company that does provide as a commercially available form of the vaccine, and so they're working to ramp that up. And let's listen to more from Dr. Ashish Shah, who spoke with Savannah Guthrie this morning on the Today Show about how the White House is trying to speed up the effort here.
Now, the CDC director yesterday said in a briefing that the highest risk population in the U.S. amounts to about 1.6 million people. As I understand it, we only right now have enough vaccine for about a third of those people. So how concerned are you about vaccine supply?
Yeah, so we have enough doses, first doses for about 2/3 of those people, and then we're working on getting additional. We are going to quickly ramp up vaccine manufacturing here in the U.S. and elsewhere to make sure that there is global supply and certainly make sure that there's enough supply for all Americans who need it.
Now, Vicky, obviously, as we're talking about monkeypox, we also have the president still battling COVID. We just, in the last few minutes, got an update from Dr. Kevin O'Connor, the president's top physician. We had been expecting that today might be the day that the president might be able to end his isolation, but Dr. O'Connor reporting that once again the president has tested positive, and so he'll remain in isolation. It's worth noting that this news comes as the White House has just announced that the president plans to travel to Kentucky to tour some of those areas affected by flooding. So they're making plans for him to reemerge from public and end that isolation, but for the moment, he is still positive.
He, like so many other, at the mercy of that test result. All right, NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli, thank you. I'm going to bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Uche Blackstock now. Dr. Blackstock, you're a doctor on the front lines. What are your thoughts on this federal response so far and what's needed right now? And is it enough to catch up?
Hey, good morning, Vicki. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, no, as you alluded to earlier, the WHO made this declaration over 2 weeks ago. So we are late in terms of responding to this, and we need an urgent response. We already know that we don't have enough vaccine, that the testing that we have actually is quite inadequate. And so we're going to hope that these funds will go towards ramping up testings, vaccinations, and treatments for the communities that are being most affected. I also think this declaration is important to declaring to the public health and medical community the importance of what's happening at this moment, as well as informing the public of the seriousness of monkeypox. And we also need to make sure we're getting out that public health messaging to the public about what to look out for in terms of signs and symptoms of monkeypox and how to prevent it and prevent the spread of it as well.
Dr. Blackstock, while experts say that monkeypox is spreading predominantly through male-to-male sexual contact, I think it's so important we reiterate that anyone can get it. In fact, in the last hour, the message was that it's so contagious it can even spread through bed sheets if an infected person has slept on that bedding. So we know the CDC has recorded at least 5 cases in children. What do we all need to know to protect ourselves, but not to be overly fearful?
Right. I think the messaging should be, don't panic, but stay vigilant. We're seeing it primarily among sexual activity in terms of prolonged skin-to-skin contact in men who have sex with men.
You have arrived at
However,
your
yes, as you
destination.
alluded to, it could be transmitted through respiratory secretions or touching contaminated surfaces such as sheets and bedding and utensils that an infected person has. So I think especially for children and their parents, talk to your pediatrician, know what signs and symptoms to look out for. And with monkeypox, it shows up like other viruses: fatigue, malaise, fever, headache, and that rash. And the rash actually can look like other rashes. People don't know what to look out for. They may think it's chickenpox or scabies or measles. And so it's very important that family members know what to look out for kids. And once you see that, you isolate your child and you make sure to call your pediatrician.
All right, really good practical advice. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Uche Blackstock, thank you. Well, today we are getting a new look at the health of the economy. More than 500,000 jobs were added to the labor market in July. That's nearly double what the economists were expecting. The unemployment rate, it fell to 3.5%. That's the lowest since February of 2020. NBC News correspondent Jake Ward joins us now. Jake, really good to see you. Let's talk about the highlights here. A lot of jobs added in hospitality, services, healthcare even. What do these numbers tell us about this current job market, and what may be some good news that even with rising interest, we may be slightly insulated from a full-blown recession?
Well, Vicki, good afternoon. That's exactly right. I mean, according to the numbers, the big picture numbers we're looking at out of this jobs report, the pandemic is over. We're back to the employment levels that we had just before the pandemic hit. So we're back to a strong labor market. We're back to 3.5% unemployment. I mean, this really encouraging news coming out of the White House. And you see all these industry areas that were just decimated by the pandemic suddenly popping back. We've got leisure and hospitality up nearly 100,000 jobs. Healthcare, which, as you know, was incredibly challenged, up by about 70,000. Even government jobs are up by about 57,000 at this point. I mean, we're really just seeing this extraordinary sort of surge across the labor market, and it really points to the possibility that we may not be headed to a recession, as people have been making the political argument about all this time. But now the economics seem to be saying, you know, we're in a very strong place. I mean, job creation over the course of the pandemic was a wild ride, as you recall. I mean, we topped nearly $714,000 job growth just a few months ago. But all of that, of course, was the pandemic. It was the weirdness of that time as businesses were closing and money's getting scooted around. Now we're back to this much more normal but very encouraging job number that we're seeing a parallel, as I say, back to February 2020. So according to the numbers, the pandemic is over and we're back to a stable job market here, Vicki.
Jake, that's all the good news. I know not every industry is seeing that kind of growth. Yesterday, Robinhood announced more layoffs, just one of several tech and finance companies to cut back. You are there in Silicon Valley. Talk to us about what's happening and what does this mean for the overall health of our economy?
Well, this is the thing, right? When you look at the big picture, the numbers are very encouraging, but when you zoom in on particular parts of the economy, it gets a little more worrisome. I mean, back in March, the company Blind, which analyzes job security sentiment across things like the tech industry, estimated that 9% of tech workers, at that point, 80% of tech workers were confident in their job security and considering looking for a new job, whereas now we're looking at about 9% of those workers are feeling confident about the job market. And that's exactly for the reasons that you described there, right? Robinhood laying people off, Oracle laying people off, even the big players, Google and Meta, the rest of them, announcing that they're going to slow job growth at a time when they had been hiring like crazy. And so although it is at this point clear from these jobs numbers that there's 1.8 jobs available for anybody, any one person who wants them, it's not all kinds of jobs. And if the tech sector where I'm standing here is a bellwether for the future, they're really worried about it. Also, I'll just say, finance, really worried about it. I mean, during the pandemic, you saw the 6 biggest banks pick up almost 60,000 jobs. That's like adding another Morgan Stanley to the industry. Well, those jobs seem to be going away now as the heads of major banks are warning of a financial hurricane. It may not be a recession that's coming, but something is shifting here. Basically, the pandemic was this weird once-in-a-lifetime reshifting of money. Now it's all shifting back. Tech is adjusting, banks are adjusting. So again, the big picture here, very positive. But the individual industries and certainly the jobs where you can put a kid through college, not as easy to come by as we might hope, Vicki.
Yeah, we see that expansion, and now we're seeing some of that contraction in certain areas. Thanks for breaking it all down for us. NBC News correspondent Jake Ward, good to see you. Well, the economy is also on the minds of lawmakers in Washington. Senate Democrats announcing overnight that all 50 caucus members are a yes on the far-reaching Inflation Reduction Act. Leaders say it will reduce the budget deficit by $300 billion. NBC News senior congressional reporter Scott Wong has been watching the negotiations play out, and he joins me now from Capitol Hill. Scott, so Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema, she was the holdout. She is now signing off on this bill. She wanted that carried interest tax provision to be removed. It was. What were some of the late changes, and what are Democratic leaders now saying about how this bill is going to help everyday Americans?
Well, Vicki, we saw a flurry of activity yesterday as Senator Sinema and Senator Schumer's staffers were sort of negotiating, putting the final touches on these talks. She had remained quiet all week, but we knew that she had certain concerns, and those started to bubble up, and we could see the contours of the deal. Let's put on the screen some of the changes that she was able to secure in the bill. Her deal removes the carried interest provision that you mentioned. It also includes changes to the minimum corporate tax rate in the form of removing accelerated depreciation. She gets more money for drought prevention, obviously a critical issue for the Grand Canyon state, her home state, and the West, as well as a new excise tax on stock buybacks. Democrats feel very confident heading into this weekend that they will be able to get this over the finish line. It's going to be a difficult process in terms of going through the amendment process. Republicans are trying to slow down this process through debate and amendments. But at the end of the day, at the end of this weekend, we should see Senate Democrats be able to push this over the finish line, Vicki.
Yeah, Scott, let's talk about that timing. You said this weekend is going to be critical. Obviously, the Senate is about to go out on its late August recess. Walk us through this whole vote-a-rama.
Yeah, a term that we use up here on Capitol Hill. It is vote after vote on amendments. Most of these will be offered by Republicans ahead of the November elections, trying to make a statement about things like border security, about high inflation rates, a number of other issues. Energy, crime were some of the other issues that they talked about. But this is a significant bill for the Democrats, $300 billion in deficit reduction. They say that's going to help drive down inflation, lower health care and prescription drug costs, that 15% corporate minimum tax rate, obviously. And then finally, $369 billion for climate and energy, a critical issue for President Joe Biden and the Democrats heading into the November election. They are feeling extremely good that this is going to help boost them ahead of November, Vicki.
Which is only 3 short months away. All right, senior congressional reporter Scott Wong, thank you. Attorney General Merrick Garland now alleging one of the officers charged with violating Breonna Taylor's rights in 2020 actually lied to the FBI. 3 additional members of the Louisville Metro Police Department, both active and former officers, are now also facing a series of accusations over the botched raid that led to Breonna Taylor's death. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen joins me now here in studio with more on this story. Ron, these are really serious charges, and they come 2 years after Taylor was killed.
874 days, her mother said later. Very serious charges. That the underlying charges are things like obstruction, conspiracy, and because this resulted in the death of an individual, they carry a potential life sentence if the officers are convicted. You may recall that the state prosecutors essentially said that the officers acted in self-defense, but now they face federal charges of allegedly violating their civil rights.
Today's overdue.